Welcome to Justin Hawkins Rides Again, the podcast. Today is an extra especial day, a day that many of you have been waiting for. Today is the day that I speak to Frankie Poullain. Frankie, of course, is the bass player from The Darkness and also Latin percussionist. He's one of the most interesting people you will ever meet, and it's brilliant to chat to him in this long-form way because he often sort of... The tangential meanderings that Frankie takes are usually on the philosophical end of things, and he really is gracious enough to try and educate me about the stuff that he's quoting, and also we talk in some depth about the issues that he and I have had in our relationship over the last 30 years, and I think what hopefully comes across is a brilliant and enduring friendship that has many more decades of fun in it. He's just one of them. I've always said this is one of the most generous and interesting people I've ever met, and I just think he's awesome in this chat. So I think you're going to really enjoy it. One thing I should mention is that the sound and the video is a bit dodgy in this. I tried to use two iPhones to film us because I thought the cameras are pretty good on those things. So I set it all up. I cut up the sound channels because it was my first time, remotely setting up an in-person interview. And also, then I had an issue with the internet, and I had to reduce the quality of the images to be able to even upload it. So what's happened is, it looks like my interview with Frankie Poullain, which I'm really proud of, just looks like it was filmed on a old Nokia phone. Which, no disrespect to Nokia, wonderful Finnish company doing brilliant electronics, but I'm talking about the old ones, the bricks. It wasn't my best work technologically, and normally I'm pretty good at that sort of stuff, but anyway, I blame the internet, and I think that's, we can all soundly leave that at their door. It's okay, but it's just not as perfect as we normally like it to be, but I hope you still enjoy it, and with that in mind, please too enjoy. Good day to you one and all. This is I, Justin Hawkins, and this is an extra special edition of Justin Hawkins Rides Again, the podcast featuring my dear friend and colleague, Frankie Poullain. I haven't got the guitar. Justin Hawkins rides again.
I started off in a harmony and then I did a unison.
That's amazing. I didn't even think that was possible.
Wouldn't be the first time, would it?
I suppose we should talk about... this is usually a thing about the pitfalls of the music trade.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about what you think have been the pitfalls of the music trade. What do you struggle with? It's things like in the early days... Because a lot of people always ask me, what's the thing to do to break through in the music trade? So, what, in your view, what should young bands be doing now?
It's strange. This is the Bader-Meinhof thing because no one had ever asked me that question before, and then somebody asked me that question two days ago. So that's not quite Bader-Meinhof because that's in the last 24 hours. Somebody said that exact same question to me 2 days ago when I did my first ever podcast, and this is my second one.
How did it go?
Well, that was like being at the dentist. This is more like being at the opticians.
Yeah, because it's more illuminating and less painful.
Exactly. Yeah. But to answer your question, I'll try to be honest, okay? The pitfalls in the music industry. Okay, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know something? Everyone trying to take credit is a bit of a pain in the neck, isn't it? It must be frustrating for you.
Is that thing that you sometimes say when success has many fathers and failure is an orphan?
Exactly. It gets quite colonial, doesn't it? People thinking that they've discovered something, annexed in different countries, and it goes right-wing politically, doesn't it? And sometimes becomes...
Give me an example of how that works in the music trade.
People is saying they've discovered things.
Yeah.
Just because they happen to be at a gig that you played, not even the first gig, just one of your early gigs. They discovered it because presumably no one else was smart enough to actually to count. People like that don't count, do they?
So do you think that's just people who are trying to position themselves as tastemakers?
Yeah, it's basically.
makers, posers. And what do you think about like? Because I always say that whenever people say to me, "Oh, what you're supposed to do in the music trade if you want to break through," I always say you have to find your audience. I honestly think that's really all there is to it. And you know, now it's you have social media, which allows you to connect to vast swathes of folk who have a passing, transient interest in the music you're doing, if you're cool enough or you have the cool enough caption.
It's changed a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, because it used to be you'd do flyering. Do you remember when we used to do flyering?
You couldn't do this, could you? 20 years ago.
No, I suppose not.
And it could have all been so different.
Yeah. Do you think we would have been more successful or less?
Well, you probably wouldn't have. That's the thing, though. Maybe you wouldn't have hit rock bottom, so you wouldn't have had that to bounce up off. Mm-hmm. You'd have had a different trajectory.
Yeah.
I can't speak too well because we've just been in a cold swim, haven't we?
Yeah.
It sounds like I'm really nervous, but it's actually because I'm shivering. Still, my body temperature hasn't quite.
So we've been doing.
Normal.
We're on a writing session at the moment in Cornwall, and one of the things that Frankie and I do, which I think is multifold. The benefits of it. It's bonding for you and I.
For sure.
It's really, really cold in the sea, and we spend as much time in there to get all the blood flowing, and then we start feeling like it stops being cold and it feels like you're burning. Yeah. And then we get out and we feel exhilarated, don't we? And
it's a metaphor for something, isn't it?
Is it?
Everything's a metaphor for everything.
Go on, what's that a metaphor for?
Well, I was asking you, because you're good at that.
Okay.
You're the metaphor whisperer. You're the metaphor... No, that doesn't work, does it?
I'm the metaphor whisperer. Okay, I'm going to whisper the metaphor. I think it's a metaphor for...
Falling in love, probably, isn't it? You go in and it's...
No,
it's
not.
Oh my
God, that is brilliant.
Yeah, but you don't jump in the cold, though, do you? It doesn't start off cold.
You go
what starts off cold, and then it burns.
Enough about my sex life? No. The divorce process? No.
It's backwards, isn't it? It's actually love backwards. Going for a swim in freezing cold water, because it's the icy things at the end, and then it becomes.
Is it a coincidence that love backwards is evil, which is the first part of evolution?
Oh, jeez.
Are we going backwards every time we fall in love?
Spinning. I can't even think now. It's probably a good thing.
It is a good thing. No, but we do that, and I think we go in. It's probably the most we talk. And me and you are in there, burning, freezing.
It's true. That's probably why.
It's exercise.
Because it's the polarities, isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds us of 2003.
When the Earth, our planet,
our axis
shifted on,
collided.
Yeah, north became south and shit became good somehow. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
And do you think that's because of the zeitgeist, when we were struggling for such a long time, and then suddenly everybody realised that we were right and they were mistaken momentarily, and then they went, no, I'm not. Was it like that?
Could be. There's a lot of things to grasp out there, isn't there? Oh, geez, look, my ring's just come up.
What's your favourite thing about being in a band?
Probably this, being able to buy Vivienne Westwood jewellery.
Yeah, so it's the trappings that you like, isn't it?
This is the...
Yeah.
What's it called again? The animal?
Armadillo? Maybe?
Armadillo, well done. We were just watching that the other night, weren't we?
Yeah.
Spinal Tap. Armadillo.
Spinal Tap was a huge influence on us, and we used to deny it at the time. I mean, we took a lot of inspiration from the fact that there was a lot of... It played into a lot of things that we find preposterous, but they're also really fun to play with. Things like male vanity.
Yep.
The ludicrous nature of the touring lifestyle anyway.
Mm.
Embracing stuff that goes wrong, which is one of my favourite things to do.
It is, it's one of your favourite things.
What happens when it goes wrong on stage? How do you feel when that happens?
It's great for me, because I Can make the odd mistake. Concentration, sometimes I lose focus. It's so chaotic on stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't imagine there's many lead singers who relish and encourage band members to make mistakes. Who else do you think does that? Could you think of another frontman that does that?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed about the difference between us and a lot of other bands that I think doing something similar is that sometimes you look at bands and then they seem really choreographed, even the sort of ones that are up and coming and exciting. If they're doing anything glam, it feels like you're watching a theatre performance of something like a musical or something. And we never do that. Like, we embrace the chaos, and I think that's actually a bit of what rock and roll actually means, isn't it? It's sort of, it's got to be rough around the edges, and when things go wrong, that's really part of the charm. I think it's a bit like the reason why some people watch motor racing is because they're hoping for an accident, and it's that kind
That's the best thing about our gigs.
Yeah, I think it always is, and like there's something memorable happens every time, and it's like. And the other thing I noticed is like when we rehearse extensively, it doesn't matter how long we spend routining stuff. The first gig we do, it all goes out the window. And often the set changes as well because we realise that stuff's not working. So it just sort of feels like rehearsing's a waste of time because you lose a bit of the magic of the spontaneity and the chaos, and you don't get it right because unless there's an audience there, you don't know if you're doing it right, do you?
I guess it's important for Dan and I because you do need that juxtaposition, of the structured backing. The more structured we are, the more kind of chaotic you can be, Are
you my safety net?
The more that you can just fuck things up a little bit.
Yeah. I don't do it on purpose. I don't do it on purpose. I enjoy it when it happens, when things break.
We enjoy it too.
The only time I didn't enjoy it was when we played in Sweden. Do you remember we played in Sweden? And it was like, I think it was a Sweden rock festival. And Extreme were playing on the same bill.
Terrible crew, and it was like
so
bad for you. I remember that.
It was a bad one because Nuno Betancourt was watching from the side of the stage.
Is it okay to say we had the worst ever crew we'd had that day? The worst.
I don't remember who was working for us, and I'm not even sure if it was really their fault. I don't think anyone
can be watching this, are they?
No, I think Colin was my guitar tech. It wasn't his fault. It's just one of those things that happened. He was a good guitar tech, but it was just to launch into the solo that I was most proud of in the set, and then Nuno watching from the side, and then nothing came out of my guitar.
It was awful.
Fucking furious. And then remember the record label lady from Sweden came in and said, "Do you remember what she said to her?"
I do remember, yeah.
Do you remember what she said though?
I remember she certainly grounded all of us, didn't she?
She said something like, "Yeah, I'm not sure why the album's not doing well. I think maybe because you're too old." That's what she said. It was like brilliant preparation. That was. And then afterwards we had the after show food, and I had a vegan pizza. Yeah. You guys had normal pizzas, I think, or you had a vegetarian one. I had a vegan one, and your ones were round pizzas with toppings on, the way that you'd expect a pizza to be.
Yeah.
Mine was a slice of bread with some like vegan salami on top of it. I was furious.
It was a tough day, wasn't it?
It was a difficult. Yeah, I mean, what do you think's been the toughest? What's the toughest thing about being out on the road?
Was that maybe your ground zero in terms of since the comeback?
Yeah, since we reformed.
Maybe it was.
In terms of backstage arrangements and having, in
terms of live experiences, there was probably heavier things, wasn't there? There was heavy things, which will be coming out in the documentary.
Oh yeah.
Later this year. Yeah. Heavier emotional things to do with family and past members. All that stuff is really draining, really tough. But in terms of the live thing, I can imagine that would be so tough for you, someone like that watching you, and then.
Yeah, I mean we've had those things where we've had Brian May and Roger Taylor, and we've had who else have we had watching from the side? That's Jeff Beck, and we've had a lot of sort of.
It's tough, isn't it? What do you find when?
And it gives you a lift, it makes you perform a bit more.
Does it always give you a lift at the times when say there's someone that's influenced you? Is that harder?
Yeah, like when Slash is there.
Dan said that, didn't he, about playing in front of Steve Jones in LA when he was doing Concrete.
Yeah.
And you realise that kind of chugging, power chord chugging, he wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for Steve Jones. Can make you a bit self-conscious, but that's probably the thing that you suffer from the least in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, I just want...
band members.
Because it's kind of like... I always think it's... You and I spend a lot of time gesticulating towards the crowd, don't we? We always kind of try and connect with certain sections. We've got our own little tribes, haven't we? Yeah. And we always sort of try to give them a good time. But I always think that when you know Slash is watching or Jimmy Page is in the audience or something like that, then it just makes you try a bit harder. Because you want them to have a good time. You want
it focuses you.
Yeah.
It does.
Because I know it's like when I go to a gig, I mean, even as having experienced, you know, all the stuff that we've experienced, you still go there and you still go, to a degree, you kind of go, impress me, don't you?
Yeah.
And you want to impress everybody, really.
There was a lot of the Hollywood Vampires gig, wasn't there? Lots of people side stage.
Yeah, why was that? How come everybody comes out for those ones? Hollywood Vampires seems to be like...
It's a Johnny Depp effect, isn't it?
Do you think it's... Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And probably a bit of the Joe Perry effect as well. Yeah. And Alice Cooper effect.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Hollywood Vampires? Do you enjoy watching their sets?
I'm not sure. No, I really don't know.
What's the good thing about it?
The thing is, I guess being in the darkness, and then if you say anything that's remotely... It certainly wouldn't be disparaging, because those guys are legends.
Yeah.
But just in terms of how much... The thing is, you know, it's a similar territory to the one that we occupy in terms of what the media would say, you know, it's that kind of theatre aspect.
Yeah.
We're more English music halls, aren't we? We're tapping into that, aren't we? Mm-hmm. Whereas Hollywood Vampires probably tapped into... It's almost like a kind of Hollywood musical, isn't it? Like it's strange...
I mean, it seems like a covers band, almost. I mean, there's a couple of originals in there.
Yeah.
It's really well played.
Didn't they start off as a wedding band?
I don't know.
First of all, yeah, I heard that the first gigs were actually at some big cheese's wedding. Mm. And then they thought, hey, we should do this.
What's the best gig you've ever seen as a punter?
It's a big question.
Mm. Was there one that sticks out as
a punter? Okay.
Yeah, as a punter.
Okay, I'm going to say 1986 because I was 18 and I was at Glastonbury and I was there. There was two amazing moments. There was the Pugs, being really near the front, having a few drinks and just the chaos of it, you know. Not even being able to hear Shane McGowan's vocals, to be honest, because it was just completely chaotic. But there was something about that.
Waterboys as well. Was that were they on the same?
Yeah, that was the same Glastonbury. And the Waterboys had. It was romantic, you know. That's the thing. Yeah, Celtic romanticism.
Yeah. Both
bands, you know. Mike Scott, people think he's Irish, but funny enough, he's from Edinburgh or from the east coast of Scotland, anyways, which is where I'm from as well.
But he always had a really cool haircut.
Yeah. And I like his face as well. He's got something. He's like.
His face likes you.
It's quite essential. He's like one of those guys you see in National Portrait Gallery. He's got a period face, I would say.
Really?
You know, you could see him there, couldn't you, with his floppy hat, almost in Shakespearean times. Mm. And I like his voice as well. He's an interesting guy, you know. He obviously went quite far down that whole New Age thing, you know, which I find quite problematic. But in him, at least, I can forgive that kind of...
You don't tolerate hippie bullshit, that's what you
No, I can tolerate that side of things when there's a romanticism to it. Mm-hmm. I like that.
And what's the difference then? So hippie... Because one of the things that you've said to me...
Yeah.
I'm going to quote you on something that's been a lesson that you've tried to drill into me over the years, and I haven't listened to it.
Never always. Trust a hippie.
Never trust a hippie. You said said you had that tattooed on your actual heart.
But you know something, I think I would provide a couple of exceptions to that, just to clarify what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. I'd say Americans, where it really came from, I think. You
mean Haight Ashbury and all that sort of
stuff?
Yeah,
I think that's different. There's a depth to it. America's a different country to Britain and England, shall we say. It's vast, and you can't really mess around if you're a hippie there. It's like, you're getting your hands dirty. You have to kind of, the American way, it's less hospitable terrain, whereas England has that Cui Twent thing, and there's also that class thing. It comes back to politics as well. Has there ever been a working class hippie? In terms of in England,
My mum and dad nearly were, I think. They're definitely working class, but only in the sense that they, because I don't know, hippie is such a broad term, isn't it? It's like
it's okay if you buy into it, if you've earned the right and you've done it. I'm talking about young people. There's a tendency where it's. I hope I'm not going to ostracize a lot of fans. But
no, okay. Of course you won't. You're allowed to have opinions.
This is ruminating, isn't it? This is what this is for, isn't it? To ruminate.
Yeah. We need to ruminate on this because but it's something that you've always said. Never trust a hippie, and I think the context that you used to say that to me in. That was actually like the first example of you taking me under your wing when I first moved to London. When I first met you.
Wow, I was even saying it back then.
You were saying it back then,
Jeez,
and it was about like I think we were in the context of talking about one particular guy that was in our group of friends, who was used to say man a lot, and he was definitely a hippie. I'm not going to say who it was, but. He's the kind of bloke where he'd borrow your last fiver and then you wouldn't see him for a couple of months and you'd be, you're waiting for your gyro to come in and then this guy's just disappeared.
Yeah. Well, the thing is they always get bailed out by their dads, don't they?
Right.
And like I say, I'm clarifying this when I'm talking about English, and I'm not talking about women because I think women actually suit that thing quite a lot because it's more of a nurturing.
Yeah.
The female hippies, there's something, it's a different thing. Psychologically, it's a different space to inhabit. But the men and the English ones, it's almost invariably coming from a middle class background, and they mess around for a few years doing it, and then they get bailed out by the dad, and then end up working for the dad's company. Yeah, it happens a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
And also, when I used to say that to you, I used to sometimes say, if I ever have a daughter, I will tell her that, because it's those nice women that are sideballed.
But at the same time, what did you do in university? You did philosophy, didn't you?
No, I was only there for like a year. I was studying history and English literature in Bath University, and then I dropped out.
To be a rock star.
Yeah. No, take acid. It was, like I say, it was that Glastonbury, 86, and there was like a thing going on, and it felt there was something in the air, and the alternative music then, and the alternative culture as well. And I read. So
do you think that's like the 80s is a golden age for like the emergence of that kind of indie stuff?
But that's when idealism died, I think. At some period in the 80s, early 80s, it was still kind of there, and then mid 80s in the UK, I think it was stamped out by a lot of Margaret Thatcher's kind of philosophies and policies, amongst other things. It wasn't just that.
When we first met, we were all skint, and you were always the most generous person I think you're the most generous person I met in London in that time, and it was always like if you had a fiver and it was enough to buy 2 pints, you'd buy us 2 pints. You know what I mean? You'd always share that.
Something I think,
and you'd do that, and it would be like an understanding that. I think I used to tease you by saying thank you for the gift of this pint, and then
we used to tease each other a lot about that kind of thing. I guess I was probably doing it just to put an end to all the Scottish jokes,
maybe that's it. You reacted.
But also, I think that the fact that you recognise that, I think people tend to project, don't they? I think you're actually a very generous guy, so people almost recognise the things that they have in themselves.
Maybe. I'd like to think so. But we didn't really have anything, did we, in those days?
Didn't have much.
Do you remember when did you... Because, I mean, we were doing a band before The Darkness, weren't we, in the 90s? I mean, I felt like I was a peripheral character in that because I was only playing a bit of keyboards and saying stuff in between the songs. But really, it was you and Dan's project, wasn't it, with Steve Sargent? And
you were the only one that had any stage presence, even on the back of the stage, sit behind the keyboard. You'd be cracking gags. And in quite a compassionate way, because the singer would be faltering slightly. He had a great voice, and he could hold down a tune really well.
I thought he was really good in the studio as well. He was a great live singer.
But to be honest, it wasn't just him. Dan, the singer, myself, we struggled a bit, but you came alive on stage.
I was always tucked away in the corner, so it's kind of...
Do you think it's an extrovert thing? Do you think it's... I mean, you can never really boil something down to one thing, but I guess that's the best way of looking at it.
No, I think what it is like, for me, it's when I'm in a situation like that one, it's a little bit like sometimes if we're in an interview, years ago when we used to do interviews and we'd all be hungover, and then somebody would ask the most mundane question, and then we'd all just sort of like sit there like this, and then I'd look around at everyone and go, oh fuck, somebody better say something, you know. So I always had that kind of, I don't know, a sense of somebody's got to say something or do something. You know?
Yeah.
It was like that, really. I didn't want to necessarily. It wasn't like a compulsion.
I don't think it's the fact that you're energised by having lots of people looking at you or lots of people in the room. You're energised?
It's a difficult question. I don't know, because...
It can be a simple.
No, because sometimes it's like...
Because it depends on the people, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You certainly weren't energised when the Disturbed fans were there, were you?
But I was.
Oh, yeah.
I really went for it that day. I was just.
But that's because you're a contrarian.
Yeah, an energised contrarian.
It's funny because we often look at things in different ways, but I often think that's one of the few things we have in common. Fundamental things is that we're both contrarians.
Yeah. No,
but different types of contrarians. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sort of. Does anything make sense? I mean, it's like...
Well, maybe different things trigger the contrarianism in each of us. That sounds a bit complicated. Maybe I'm just overcomplicating this.
I feel like the Disturbed gig you're talking about, and David Draymond, did I tell you about that?
Is he the singer?
Yeah, he's the singer from Disturbed, and so like I think one of the questions I had on one of my comments days was, what was the worst audience reaction you ever had? And I said, well, it was that Disturbed gig. It was awful, you know, they were throwing loads of stuff. It was really angry, and I might have said something disparaging towards the Disturbed crowd because they didn't fucking like me. Why would I bother pretending to like them, you know? And then David Draymond actually tweeted or Instagrammed at me saying, I'm really sorry that you had that experience. Maybe we can get a beer sometime. It was so awesome. It was really nice.
Changed so much, haven't they?
Yeah, but I mean, it's sort of... But I think that it's probably always been like that in America. And I always think that there's a sort of jealous... band bitching inter-band or, you know...
Well, the toxicity of the British music scene with all the inter-band thing, that was really fired up by the NME, wasn't it?
Yeah.
NME and Melody Maker used to love all that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, because a lot of those journalists from those magazines now are kind of struggling now, aren't they? Mm. And there is a...
I don't know who you're talking about. Who's struggling? What do you mean? They're struggling for work? Or I mean, that's for everybody's struggling, aren't they? Internet's killed everything.
Yeah, I don't want to knock people when they're down.
Yeah.
Or maybe I do.
Well, maybe they... I mean, I don't have that much sympathy for NME journalists because, like, I feel like when we were sort of coming up...
But let bygones be bygones.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for that, but I just think that, like, you know, when we were emerging, there was another band called the Datsuns, which was like, remember those guys? They're like a New Zealand-based or New Zealand. They came from New Zealand, right? Yeah. And they were doing something along the lines of what we were doing. It's more in the AC/DC realm, not as much Queen, but they were sort of in the same. People would probably categorise them in the same way that they did us at the time, and the NME were just like they wanted them to win. They didn't want to see a scene of that kind of rock coming back.
Yeah.
They wanted the Datsuns to be the band, and they wanted us to fuck off. And there was one journalist that wrote that I should be killed and replaced with some real music. And I was like, that's not a very nice thing for my mum to read. Like, you think about like when stuff comes up, and your parents are excited about it. They're making scrapbooks, and then they see something like that. It's like,
but something. The issue is just the fact that their knowledge and the calls they make are actually not educated ones. For example, the one saying that Andrew WK, who was one of their darlings as well, who they were desperate to be big, weren't they? They said that we stole his shtick.
I've never seen his. I don't know what his shtick is.
Exactly, but Enemy said that we stole his shtick, and they said
because we like having parties.
Yeah, they made comments about the Datsuns were like Led Zeppelin, and we were kind of the AC/DC side, and they've always had it in AC/DC because they see that as kind of toxic masculinity. Mm. I remember they once said, there was an Enemy journalist who said that it was AC/DC, it was like music for rapists, or words to that effect. Jeez. Which is really nasty, kind of. It's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it is bullshit.
But that's what I mean, it's just, they're so wide of the mark, Mm. Anyway, why are we wasting our time talking about it?
I don't know, actually.
Fuck them,
yeah. Fuck them. What was the nearest when you were like because you were in London for a bit longer than me. When did you move to London?
Mid-90s.
Okay, so I came towards the end of the 90s, really.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe 97. Oh, of course.
I was there at
so Dan and I used to visit. Yeah, the band that Dan and I were in before Empire. I was in a band with him before I was in a band with you. And we went for a songwriting weekend to Lowestoft, staying at your folks' place.
Yeah, you came to Gulston.
Yeah, and the first time I saw you, I think you were playing football with these kids.
Yeah.
And I just remembered when you were celebrating the goals, you just had this huge smile. And I'm not saying this to be cheesy, but it was just like such a innocent smile, but just like joyful. It was such a joyful smile.
There's nothing better than playing football, though. I've always said that.
Exactly. Yeah, you were having such fun doing it. You're playing these younger kids, and you just looked incredibly free, and you had a real positive energy. Everyone knows.
Let's clarify. The kids weren't. We're not talking about 10-year-olds or anything. It's like, when you say kids, you mean people in their early 20s, like.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I used to play every Sunday. You must have come down for a rehearsal or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a songwriting weekend.
Yeah.
Which I guess indicates that the band was relatively advanced, but I think we were just pretentious, and we just...
Nothing wrong with that, then.
Nothing wrong with
You've got to be pretentious, haven't you? Because the things that we like...
I'm probably the most pretentious in the band. I'm the bass player, Spinal Tap, I mean, I'm half French, so it's a given, A half French guy is going to be more pretentious than a couple of guys from Lowestoft, every time,
I don't know, though.
Really? I always thought that you guys thought that often when you find me a bit annoying or excruciating, it's like normally because I'm being a bit pretentious.
No, I think sometimes it's like, what's frustrating...
Actually,
I don't know whether it's appropriate to get into this.
No. It's not appropriate, but I just want to say one thing. I know what it is, because the thing is, it's the same things when I look at a brother of mine or a parent of mine. I can see that, and the same thing that I find exasperating. The same thing that I find exasperating. I'm old enough now where I think, of course, that's what the people find exasperating in me as well.
No,
it's very simple.
You know what? There was a period of time when I was so into what we were doing and like living it. Do you know what I mean? Like I was just like, I changed a lot, and I know I changed in some good ways and some really terrible ways as well. Just from never switching off.
Yeah.
And we talk about this a bit in some, like, as one of the pitfalls, because it changes your. If you do it in a way that's authentic and rings authentic, then you're doing it when you're on stage and you're doing it when you're off stage, and you're the same person. It's just obviously there's some slight exaggerations in the way you gesticulate when you're playing live, but you've got to change who you are to really sell that, because it's such a fucking crazy, it's a ridiculous thing that we're trying to convince people that we are, So I know I changed, and then I felt like there was a period of time when I felt like we weren't on the same page, and I didn't expect
2004.
I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. I think it's something that's sort of, and I know it's not you. It's actually I just get lonely sometimes when I'm out on the.
Of course.
When I'm out there trying to do it all, and I'm just like, fucking, this is it. Yeah, this is the great. And then I get up on the bus, fucking hungover, and you're already out at an art gallery or something like that. That was frustrating, because we couldn't hang and grow in the same way. I kind of felt like.
What are we talking about in that period, though?
I think we're talking about.
Or after the Reformation.
I think the Reformation, we were all sort of gingerly trying to protect something that we knew was important. And
it was a tough time, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was difficult.
Also, I think it wasn't necessarily our best albums.
No, it wasn't. But that's only because we weren't communicating
the way the
properly.
band was managed and the running of the band. And there was a lot of issues, wasn't there?
There was, but I think that there was a sort of. That was a good example of us going away for 5 years, and then when we come back, like, the whole industry's completely changed.
Yeah.
And then we had that whole thing of like, because our first record, and to a lesser degree the second record, and all of the sort of existence around it, there was actually mystique. There wasn't things like there wasn't content. We weren't obliged to show people what it's like when we go for a shit or whatever it is people put on social media. But there was no. All people saw was the videos that we did, the interviews that we did, the gigs that we did, and everything else was sort of. This was mythological, really, wasn't it? It was kind of like people were sort of euphemistically talking about their experiences at our after shows or our launch parties and stuff. And we had this kind of thing that I thought slipped away from us, where we were properly like 4 snotty wankers just coming in and not giving a fuck and just doing our stuff, and we weren't playing anything that was fashionable.
It felt good to hear that. For some reason, when you said 4 snotty wankers,
that's who we were. Remember?
That's like that really resonates. It really resonates.
That's what you want to be, isn't it? It's like
only we'd known that at the time.
Exactly, and I felt like I did know it, and I could see it disappearing, and I was like, and I was trying to pull us in like a really destructive direction, and you were probably protecting yourself. And I know what happens, like, after a period of time, you've got like. I think you have 4 people, and it's a work thing and it's a gang thing, but gradually you go off and you have like your own lives, don't you? And you have sort of like, you've got a family, or you become a father, or just other business interests and other projects and things like that, and you lose that sort of connection. And it's really frustrating, because that it is the thing that I'm most fond of, is the stuff when we were first coming up, and we were like, fuck you guys, isn't it? Fuck all this shit, it was all bullshit, and we just totally called it, all the time. We were pretty punk rock, and we lost that a little bit, and that's what was frustrating for me, I think.
It was, wasn't it? When you look back at us just kind of shitting it out, like even on the TV shows. Yeah. Like, we were really kind of, we didn't compromise, we weren't really aware of the surroundings. We were just this kind of unit. When you see some of those American TV shows, we just got so much attitude,
I mean, that thing about jumping off, when I jumped off Jules Holland's piano, that was your idea.
Well, thanks.
And you said to me, and you actually took me to one side, and you did that one in me. You should get up on his piano and do the solo. You know what I mean?
No, but can I tell you something? The most popular comment on that video on YouTube is when the singer leaves the bassist hanging, because I went to give you a high five. I went to give you a high five after you said that. Thanks for saying it. And then you But of course, I don't blame you.
I was fucking
because
pumped.
of course you were fucking pumped. So
I
of
was
course you
really
didn't see
pumped.
me. Yeah.
You don't always see the
Of course.
palm.
Yeah, exactly. Of
In
course.
those
And I didn't
situations.
take like that at the time either. Just because some people see it like that on YouTube, who gives a shit, you know.
I always think about the sort of urban gesticulation and the natty abbreviation of the handshake. The high five. It's like the coolest one is, you know, in Purple Rain, the movie. I mean, when the time of doing it, and is it Morris? What's his name? Morris
Day.
Yeah, and he goes like, "Somebody bring me a mirror," and then his mate brings up a mirror, and they do a high five that's sort of conducted down there. It's a really cool one. I'm going to make it up to you now. This one. You don't even look.
Oh yeah, I like
Back
it.
up, you know what I mean?
I like it.
What are we doing? This is the whitest.
But this is an example of why white guys should never try and do that.
Yeah, never abbreviate the.
But I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah.
But again, that's the whitest thing. That's why people.
Imagine a high five. I appreciate the sentiment.
White people do it awkwardly, and then they appreciate the sentiment.
I love the sentiment of the high five.
Roger Moore, do you think he ever high-fived someone?
Cool, that's a good question.
Probably Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
Mind you, would you? No, you wouldn't high-five someone you just had a romantic liaison with, would you? That's like a bit dudish, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've talked to girls before, and they say that what they can't stand is when a guy calls them dude, like a guy that they're romantic about.
Have you ever done that?
I remember this girl was showing me this message. No, she was talking about like a guy that she'd been with, you know, and she'd been involved with a few years previously, you know, and then said that she went off him because he called her dude.
You've got to be so careful with the language you use nowadays, isn't it?
You do, yeah.
So what about when you're on tour, and do you find... Well, okay, so
Yeah.
I'll give you my perspective of touring. It's the only time in my life when I have any routine in my day. I know what's going to happen.
Are we moving away from emotions?
No, I think we should probably...
Because I was thinking about the thing about men, when they get uncomfortable about emotions, they always bring it back to numbers and kind of dimensions, you know.
Yeah.
Like when somebody mentions that there's a baby's been born, and the women are all saying, "Oh, that's lovely," all hugs, and how do you feel? And then the men are just really uncomfortable. And
How heavy was
how
it?
many months? You know, how much was the baby?
How many months?
How much is the baby?
It's usually going to be 9. That's going to be the answer. Was it the full 9 months? Yeah, nice.
They always have to quantify.
How many legs
everything.
it got? 2? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, mine 2.
Emotional crisis, it's numbers. But anyway, carry on.
Oh yeah.
No, we can carry
So
on.
why do you do that then? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's sort of like how your income is sort of intrinsic to your self-perception as well, and all that sort of stuff? Do you think it plays into that?
Well, it's destroying the planet, isn't it? Because it's the economic growth, GDP, all that kind of thing. Numbers, figures. So the media say it's up or it's down, and if it's down, then you've got to do even more fracking and all that kind of stuff. So it's destroying the planet. Just man's obsession with numbers, targets, which is basically just the sperm thing, isn't it? It's just sperm and egg.
Invented anyway?
Somebody said that about football. That is probably some Guardian journalist, but something about putting the ball in the net is it's just basically this, the sperm and the egg, basically. It's a little bit simplistic, though, isn't it? I mean, if you simplify everything in life like that,
No, but
when
it's
you
not
can
the
get
same
out of
as that,
bed.
because otherwise there'd be a goal, there'd be 5 million balls flying towards the goal, and only one of them can go in.
I know, but I guess in a way, it's if you slow down time and just had them all, those
Yeah,
charts.
and then what would happen? Then there'd be a whole new pitch would grow from that goal which has got the ball in it. What's that? I don't understand that metaphor. That doesn't work.
Again, it's one of these things. It's one of these ways of simplifying things down. It's the same kind of people that say that Jaws, the movie, is basically vagina with teeth. It's like the sexual.
Nobody's ever said that to me.
It's the Freudian analysis.
So what the fuck is the Meg then?
It's the Freudian analysis of things. If you do, it's like reductionism. Deconstructing.
Why does
things.
it have to be a vagina?
It's a pain in the ass. I used to do it too, deconstruct things, and I thought, what the fuck's the point in deconstructing everything?
So when somebody said
I
to
would rather
you,
construct
Jaws, please.
Songs,
Yeah, creativity.
Exactly.
That's
my problem. I deconstruct too much.
You know, like in an era when everything seems to be content and very little of it seems to be art, do you think we should be more careful about who we allow to label themselves creative?
Good point, yeah.
Do you think, like, do you get pissed off with bloggers and stuff like that calling themselves creatives?
Maybe not, though. Because there is that element of... Oscar Wilde had answers for all the art questions, didn't he?
Mm.
He said, a truth in art is only that is contradictory is also true.
Wait, you have to run that past me again.
Well, a truth in art
Yeah.
is only that whose contradictory is also true in the realm of art.
Ah, okay.
So
and
it makes me think of you.
So
because
if you write a song and then you say, I don't love you, then it also means I love you. Is that what you mean?
Well, I would take it in regards to you, like your aesthetic, where something is so kind of like bad, or oh, that's fucking terrible, but it's also fucking brilliant as well. Yeah?
That's my favourite.
That's the best way
I
of
love
summing
anything
up that
that's-
Oscar Wilde quote.
Okay.
And I do think that that's an aesthetic.
Oh,
that
do you
you're
mean
pretty
because
good at.
it's subjective? Is that what you mean? Like, because
It's the fact that there are no moral kind of boundaries for a start, but also moral guidelines. It's not a case of good and bad. It's just a case of it's art. Yeah, where judgments don't apply, or they shouldn't apply. They shouldn't matter. Judgments don't matter.
So what's the point of journalists then?
Exactly. I guess that's is creating like a high watermark. It's in a good journalist should have an understanding of classical education in a way, to have some grounding, where they understand a little bit about the Greeks or the Romans and the standards, and a lot of things came from Greece, didn't it? Theatre, philosophy. Can I do one thing with you?
Yeah, of course you can.
You know how sometimes you give instant reactions to videos?
Yeah.
I want you to give an instant reaction to a quote, yeah?
Okay, go on.
Okay. First I'll just tell you the quote and then we can say who it was. I only read it for the first time, I think, day before yesterday. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the dawn of time. It's by a guy called Marcus Aurelius. It's quite powerful, isn't it?
Shit. Okay.
It's
So then, what does that mean then? Has it
exactly.
Okay, so when he says that, is he saying that like there's a timeline to it as well, and it's determined to happen, or it's just like these events or micro events or anything? Like you're talking about things like a fly landing on your shoulder or something like that. Or is it everything?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't really looked at the context of it or anything. I know it's the Stoics, yeah?
Yeah.
Stoicism.
Yeah.
But I think it plays into a lot of things. Like you could say it plays into multiverse theory, which you've talked about a little bit. And also to the fact that time's a human mind construct as well.
That's a Prince quote, isn't
Maybe
it?
the Stoics were into that,
Wasn't it Prince that likes that time?
Yeah, I think quite a few people have said about Prince. He's probably the coolest guy that ever said it.
Yeah, he probably is actually.
Yeah, I guess if a scientist says it, no one really pays any attention.
Yeah, when Prince says it, it's like, yeah, well, it must be true then. What's your favourite Prince album?
It's a great quote though, isn't it?
It is great. It's great, but it makes me think.
I almost couldn't even say it because it was so heavy. My stammer almost came back,
Yeah. It's such a huge.
I know, it's too
statement.
big to talk about, isn't it?
God, it's enormous. So
It is big, isn't it? It's huge.
Why is it so big?
I don't think I've heard that. Why is it so big?
It doesn't know why it's so big.
Why is it so big?
It's frightened. It doesn't know why it's so big.
The Stoics are quite in fashion.
Okay, so the Stoics, I always thought Stoicism were people who just sort of steadfastly, without any emotion, just confronted whatever it was that life threw at them and never sort of impulsively reacted. Or is that what Stoicism is, or is that something completely different? And how does it relate to music?
Okay, now we're talking. That's all we can talk about, isn't it? We're musicians.
Yeah.
We're not philosophers.
So in the music existence, how does Stoicism...
Hey, maybe we're Stoics without even realising it.
I feel like we might be because, because I think a lot of people, and like people that we know, have had musical journeys of their own, and at some point it gets to the point where it's unbearable. They're too invested in the idea of success, so that when that doesn't happen, they're not ready to sort of stoically accept that and plough through that. They give up and they go and do something else, don't they? Mm-hmm. Or they pivot, or they just abandon that dream.
Yeah.
In the name of...
Pussies.
I don't know.
In the name of being a pussy?
Being a giant pussy, that is it. But it's also kind of like... so that they can experience success in some area, you know. I got a little cousin who, Connor Adams.
Yeah.
He's a lovely boy. He used to play rugby at quite a high level. Like he was, playing for England in an age group above the one he was, because he was huge and he was really
quite
good.
brawny, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just a really good. He's well built for rugby and he's talented and all that. But I think he heard some music, he might have been Ed Sheeran or something like that, and it just changed his whole life. And now chases that, abandoning like the opportunities that he had to be a professional sports person, because music is the thing that he loves.
Yeah.
Now, is that what?
Are we still talking about Aurelius? How it relates to that? Everything relates to that Aurelius quote. You can't get away from it, can you? It haunts you. It's going to keep you awake tonight, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah.
But Connor, nice guy, yeah.
I mean, I just think I admire stuff like that, and that's actually what people used to see in us. Do you remember when we did the first sort of national press thing we had that was important was the Dazed and Confused thing, which was a fashion magazine, and their whole thing about us was, here's a band that is making really unfashionable music, they're never going to make it, and yet they plough on, and that was the thing that they admired, wasn't it? Sort of like just stoically brushing off all of the disappointment of not being able to do music to the kind of audiences that we felt like our music deserved, and we were just carrying on. Yeah. And they were just like,
oh yeah, Stoicism.
Is that Stoicism?
I think it has aspects of it. Yeah, it's hard to talk about yourself, isn't it, in your own context?
Yeah. So if you had a philosophy then, what's your philosophy? Because I know that you're well versed in a lot of these things. Do you pick and choose bits?
I'm not really, I just pick and choose. I was quite proud though that I encouraged you to put Nietzsche reference in
Mighty Wings.
I'm Not Mine, I'm Dynamite and Mighty Wings.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really understand why I was saying it, but I thought, well, if Frankie thinks it's cool, I'll do it.
But those giant philosophy books, very few people have actually read Either Or by Kierkegaard. It's enormous, and the lettering is quite small. Look at that, I'm still shivering. Not from nerves because of doing a fucking podcast like this, but because of swimming in the freezing cold water. You'll back me up here.
It's
not because I'm nervous, is it?
No, you're not nervous. Have a look at this thing. Still going? Yeah, good.
But anyway, philosophy. Yeah, you can't. As soon as you start a conversation talking about philosophy, it just sounds stupid. Because it's life, it's school of life, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't know. It's weird because it's like, I think, what does philosophy do? It helps, it equips you for the challenges and the tribulations. But you know something,
Ricky Gervais, there'd be no office if Ricky Gervais hadn't studied philosophy, and he's gone on record and talked about that. Yeah. It gives you a certain amount of self-awareness. It gives you context, and it also gives you this thing, which I think is very important in life. And I've boiled it down to one kind of phrase, which is when people talk about things and the troubles that they're having, I always say, or when they try to understand something, I say, everyone zones in. Don't zone in, zone out. And that's why people become stoners or do mushrooms, because it's a way of zoning out. And that's what happens with age, you know. Rather than like this, although paradoxically your spine is more like this when you're older, but spiritually and cosmically you're actually more like this. Hopefully, if you've
but is that more?
It doesn't have to be
something
books,
to do
but
with
the mixture of experience, books, everything, and emotional experiences you've had, and mistakes you've made. It comes from mistakes, doesn't it? And we certainly, as a band, coming back to the band, that's one thing that I love about this band is we're not afraid to make mistakes. Most of what we do is actually mistakes. If you think about the albums, you know, when you look back 10 years later, most of the album is a mistake, but often a glorious mistake. And there's a guy actually, sorry, I'll just finish talking about philosophy now by talking about one guy, which might make you laugh actually. It's a guy called Emil Cioran, Cioran. He was a Romanian guy, and his philosophy was the philosophy of failure. He believed that 99.9% of what humans do ends in failure. And if you actually think about it,
I think he's being generous.
Yeah, if you think about it clinically, it's actually true.
Yeah.
But he was also talking from the perspective of being a Romanian. And to him, Romania was the country that embodied that more than any other country in Europe and possibly in the world. Because if you look at Romania, for a start, the gypsies are extremely discriminated against, and it's not talked about nearly as much as other
minorities
sectors of society. But anyway, so Emil Cioran was talking as a Romanian, but there's also something quite funny about his philosophy, because he's extremely dry. He has the most incredible hair. Like Nietzsche has the most amazing moustache, that huge walrus moustache. Emil Cioran has like David Lynch hair, like thick, swept back hair, and a great face that just never moves, never smiles, and huge big bushy eyebrows. And he only talks in aphorisms. All of his philosophies, I think an aphorism is a 2-line thing where the first line posits something and the second one kind of poetically resonates with or answers the first line. So it's all aphorisms and based around the variation of the fact that everything is failure. But it's actually quite liberating to have that as a starting point, isn't it? A starting point of just thinking if everything's fact. That's why everyone talks about positive thinking, but I think the power of negative thinking is something that people don't talk
you've always
about.
done that actually.
It's a great starting point.
Yeah. Because if you don't understand the reasoning behind that, it can seem like a really pessimistic view, and but sometimes you do a thing where you predict the worst case scenario.
I know it pisses you off sometimes because I choose moments to do it, because I do it before we go on stage.
Yeah. But there was a time when that would be frustrating for me, but now it's kind of like I look forward to it because I know where it's coming from now.
Yeah, not
it's taken a long time for us to sort of understand each other a bit, really. But
it's true.
Yeah, but it's so funny because I always think about longevity of bands, and like if a band like us with the different sort of personalities that we've got and all that sort of stuff, and if we had done like one record and then just never spoken to each other again, we would never have got to the point where we understood. Yeah, you know what I mean? We'd never understand each other.
It makes you think.
Yeah,
makes you think why it happened as well.
Yeah,
it's a journey of discovery, and it's certainly a test with all of us because we're all so different.
Yeah.
To anyone outside, I don't want to sound cheesy here, American schmaltzy, but the way you and Dan are with each other is so inspiring and such a template for an example of sibling or just family members just getting on. It's really inspiring because you're so different, but really it's just your good qualities enable you to be incredibly tolerant.
But it
starts with tolerance and understanding and compassion. It's all the good stuff.
The other thing that used to cause caused all of us, and I'm not just talking about me and you, like the stuff that was creating friction between me and my brother and you and my brother and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It all comes from the same thing, which also took a little while for us to recognise, and that was the fact that we all loved the project and cared so much about it and was trying to pull it in the direction that we thought it should go in.
Yeah.
And we were all right and all wrong at the same time.
Yeah.
And we didn't really understand what collaboration is.
Yeah.
You know? Because I still get it now. Like on the last record, there was a song on the last record and I was like, yeah, this is the single, guys. This is the fucking single. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And I was just getting like, yeah, for everybody. Management, you, Dan, everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I don't understand this. And because I still get really passionate about stuff like that, I was like, am I even collaborating with people that have the same artistic vision as me? And that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not why you collaborate.
Yeah.
If we did, we'd be the shittest band on earth.
Yeah.
It would just be like...
It's great when Dan says that, when he knows that a song is really cooking and really good, when we all start fighting.
Yeah.
Fighting the battles for what we think the song should be. It's always a good sign.
And you've suggested things in the past that I think is more like the Queen model, where like a song that is contentious because there's things in it that we all love that we want to explore more.
Yeah.
You always say one person should be elected the custodian of that song's destiny and sort of, you know, direct the rest of us to their will, and usually the person that you suggest for those things is the one that cares about the song the most. But it doesn't always help, because sometimes we all just love it for totally different reasons.
Of course. I've made so many mistakes, and you know, but I think we all have. We've all made mistakes like that emotionally. But the thing is, we're all aware of that now, and that's why it's a great time for the band, because we've all become more self-aware. You know, thank God.
Yeah.
And especially you, I think, because you've actually gone such a long time without having a drink, and every year. I just want to say one thing. It is really inspirational to see, but the reason is because, just to simplify it, it's lightness. It's when people have therapy or give up booze or do both things in unison, there's a lightness to them. They just become lighter and lighter. And over the years, you become lighter and lighter since you stopped drinking. And I look at that quite... it's inspiring, but also almost like a bit jealous too. And it almost kicks... Well, it kicks my own ass, because I would like to have that lightness too.
Yeah, but it's... I always... I feel that, you know, and other people have said it to me as well. Like, so if somebody hasn't seen me for a long time...
Yeah.
And then they see me and it's like, fuck, you're much lighter now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I notice it myself. But what happens is I invariably put myself in situations where I'm piling stuff on.
Yeah.
You know, like workload, emotional...
Oh, that's a good point you made, though, because you can only take on all that thing if you have that lightness, because if you have the heaviness, then you become
no
avoidant.
capacity for it.
Yeah, you become avoidant. And I'm aware of that side to myself, and it's something that I'm working on a lot, actually, over the last 2 years. It's gone all American, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, a bit hippie-ish as well. But it's...
Oh, man, so...
Yeah, but I mean, when it's like... because this week we're writing songs.
Maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing that thing. I'm just criticising something in myself.
Oh, you're projecting.
Of course I am. I'm projecting. It's always projecting, isn't it?
Is it?
I'm glad I'm able to tell people that. I hope you keep this bit in.
Yeah. I reckon this is...
Because otherwise I think I might look like a bit of a with all that hippie stuff.
No, we're not going to make you look like...
But really, it comes back to Johnny Rotten, you know?
Yeah.
Johnny Rotten was the first guy to call out Jimmy Savile. We all know about that. A lot of people have seen that clip on YouTube, on that local radio clip. And the punks, even if you know, it doesn't really matter what you think of the music. But
because punk isn't nihilism.
No,
it isn't.
I would say nihilism can be a flavouring to punk, like a little kind of savoury comes from, but it's not the foundation for it. I agree. Because
it's like, it's more like activism or something like that, isn't it? It's sort of... There used to be a kid at my school, I think his name was Barry, and he was like, yeah, I want anarchy. I just want anarchy. I don't want a job. I just want to sign on. And I'm like, well, if there's anarchy, there won't be a welfare state. You can't sign on if there's anarchy. There won't be any fucking money. What are you going to do?
It's true.
You know, and there was a lot of sort of. I'm not sure if everybody really understood what punk is actually politically where it sits. You know,
Yeah.
but really, it's just like when I say nihilism, I never mean it in a negative way. I just mean.
It's the legacy.
You have a disregard for a lot of the structures that you know.
Yeah, but the legacy is incredible, isn't it?
Mm.
And you know, you don't have to like the bands at the time, but just to see the legacy and the people that were part of that small group of people, and just the proportion of them that went on to do something important. You know?
What do you think the difference is between American punk and English punk? And what do you consider to be like the archetypal American punk band and the archetypal English punk band?
The English punk has a flavouring of kind of the music halls, and it has there is a flavouring of there's something absurdist about the English punk, and it's probably a bit more political, not with a capital P. And has that situationist thing, this, you know, that French thing where it's, you know, they were just kind of wandering around, and I would say it's more kind of badass. But that's a bit silly using an American expression.
Not really, because I know what you mean. I think American punk. If you look at what the music sounds like, for me, American punk, it's always tighter. It's more melodic.
It's also a bit schmaltzy too, because it's got that, you know, the Ramones thing, yes, happier, but that's the thing. There's no sentiment in the English punk, and that's what I like about it. But you know something, it's such a huge difference, because a lot of the Clash stuff is actually quite cringy. All that, and also the political side of it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. It's like romanticising a lot of the kind of Marxist guerrilla groups, kind of obscure ones, you know, because it's clever to reference obscure stuff. And I think a lot of that is quite cringy. Whereas the Pistols, I think, really does stand up.
Fucking Sex Pistols.
I love the contradictions of the Sex Pistols, you know, like the major label thing, and the and then just bringing in Sid, you know, and that's quite nihilistic, isn't it?
You can't. I don't think there's ever been a punk band that can surpass the Sex Pistols, and that's actually one of the records that I was brought up on.
And it's mainly because they slowed everything down. Yeah, because the other punk bands, if there was a graph of the tempo of the songs, that's a lot to do with the producer, isn't it? Chris Hughes? Chris Thomas. I always get them mixed up. Sorry, which one? It's one of the Chris's.
Thomas, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I'm stupid. I don't care. You know, Bucky. I can't remember. Names are for guys, you know. But I like to tap into the female
thing. The producer when something's like.
I like the way women don't care about names. So I love the way women don't care about names.
Women. This is something that I've observed about you, Frankie. Gender politics. This is something that you've got like a really. It's a beautifully old-fashioned sort of look at what. And often you'll start a sentence and you'll say, "Men do this, whereas women do that," and you're the only person I know that really goes in hard on that stuff.
Well,
where does that come from?
Well, okay, let me clarify what I was saying there. First of all, what I was trying to say was I love the way that women, when they listen to a piece of music or watch a film, you know, the guy will start kind of getting all nerdy and talking about the different films that this director's done, the names of the films, and often when I'm talking to women, they don't care about that, and they don't really want to, and they almost get embarrassed about the fact that they don't know the names, and that's what I think is like ridiculous.
I think I've observed the same thing. You're right about that.
Yeah, it's the emotional reaction to it, you know, and you know the thing itself. You know, the names is a guy thing. It's like numbers. Guys is numbers and names, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
it gets tedious, doesn't it?
I think sometimes I'm nerdy like that about music, but that's only because I want to know. Like if I like something, I want to know more about what that person, or you know, if I know who produced it, then I'll be like, okay, well then I'm going to look for other stuff that they've done. You know,
there's a means to an end. But that's the point I was trying to make there. Yeah. It was hopefully a constructive and a positive observation.
Well, I don't think anybody came off badly in it. It's just interesting that you always observe those things. Especially in 2023, it's really old-fashioned.
I know you can be scared of seeing these things, but there are differences, and of course,
Of course, there's differences. Yeah. Of course there are.
Of course, we're really, one love and
one love. Right, guys.
Yeah. Never quite figured out how to do that.
Yeah, it's this.
Oh, am I doing it right?
I remember once we played a gig in Italy somewhere, and there was someone doing that in the front row. And I didn't understand what he was doing. I thought he was making like a rude gesture.
It took me years to understand what people were doing when they did that.
Yeah.
I was blind to it for some reason. Blind to the...
Yeah, I was offended by it. I thought, these fucking cunts, what does that even mean? I thought that was like an Italian thing for something.
Jesus, my asshole isn't that big. Despite what I was up to last night. Jeez.
That's good work.
Wait though, will that now be construed as something that was...
No, because it's going to offset your gender politics stuff. It's brilliant.
Okay, good.
Brilliant.
It all comes out in the wash.
We'll figure that out.
Good.
All right. Okay, so we've done some tangential meanderings, which I was hoping for.
Yeah,
but I want to talk to you about Permission to Land 20th anniversary.
Okay.
Did you listen to all the extra stuff that's going on those discs? So there's was it 5 compact discs and some old shows and stuff?
Not too much of it.
Did you listen to any of it?
Well, something, the demos were very fresh in my memory. I just had to listen to the first few bars of the Black Shock demo and I thought, that was just like yesterday.
Yeah, you did exactly the same thing as me. I didn't bother listening to it.
Yeah, it was so strange. And the live stuff, I just think listening to just the audio without seeing the visuals, I'm not sure about it. But still buy it, of course.
Yeah, you're going to love it. But Dan did though, because he sort of said it's really exciting and he's impressed with it. But I mean, it's not properly mixed because it's just it's some sort of monitor mix, which makes it more exciting somehow. And then apparently the guy that mastered it did a brilliant job. So, are you excited about it coming out? And what do you think about 20 years of that record? What does that record make you?
Again, it's a number. I just think 20. What does that mean? It's just total bullshit. What a number? It's got a fucking 0 at the end. What the fuck does that mean?
Who cares? Yeah.
But having said that, we've turned it around and we spent a lot of time the last few days coming up with this stage show. Yeah. And we are excited about the tour.
Yeah. Do you remember the tour we did 10 years ago, the 10th anniversary of Permission to Land, when we did all those songs? Yeah. And a lot of other stuff that was from other parts of our career. But it was more like an outreach project where we were playing tiny places like Home Firth and all these kind of smaller kind of...
It's strange the way that outreach, it was like a fart that wouldn't go away, that word.
Yeah.
Why for a start did it
link us?
Emit from someone's...
I have no idea.
And then why?
I think it was like it made it sound a bit like Care in the Community or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounded like we were. Exactly. Like we were to be pitied.
Like people needed us to bring our music to them because they couldn't be asked to go to a main city.
My God, 10 years later we're still doing this kind of stuff.
No, we're doing big stuff now. The tickets have just gone.
Would you have guessed that 10 years later we would have turned it around like this? In terms of ticket sales and such like.
I never put a time factor on those things.
Oh my God, I'm being a guy again. Talking about numbers.
I never do that. I actually, that's my femininity doesn't allow me to put a timeline on the sort of various benchmarks that we...
Why are you making a difference between men and women then?
Because we're totally different in every way. So but it's, I feel like... we've always known that there's an undertaking to try and rebuild after 5 years off. We've always known that. And every time, we'd get a few, arena shows or whatever, like we played arenas earlier this year, I always think it's like when your favourite football team gets a new manager and then you get a couple of good results. You think, this is a false dawn. There's something philosophically different about being in a band that does the kind of music we do right now that isn't the zeitgeist, isn't in the charts, and it isn't kind of fashionable. We don't have major label backing. We don't have the clout in the machinery behind us to do anything that's big like it used to be. But what's important is that we sort of become a cult band, and even that's growing to a degree, isn't it? But in a much slower way. And I just never I never looked at it as a thing where we were aiming to do, like, to get into those spaces.
Yeah.
Like, if I did have, like, a favourite venue, for example, we're hitting them now. You know, like things like Nottingham Rock City has always been like one of the best gigs you can do in the country.
Oh, yeah.
Glasgow Barrowlands, I'm so happy that we're back in there. But I've enjoyed every show we've done in Glasgow.
Yeah.
That's why we wrote that song, Welcome to Glasgow, is because we just love playing there. It's just a different experience because the audience is, there's no other way to say this, better. It's just the way it is. Yeah. So we're already sort of doing stuff that makes it rewarding. And then the things that aren't rewarding about it, I suppose, like having children, you just, you put up with those, don't you?
Yeah. I guess in the early part of our career, we were the hare, now we're the tortoise. And it's actually more fun being a tortoise, isn't it?
Well, it is, isn't it?
Yeah. I've had partners who've said that that's my spirit animal, the tortoise. It's the most common ones I've had the last few years, but because no one knows you like a partner, let's be honest. You know, the observations that...
Nobody knows you full stop.
True. That's because you won't let them.
That is...
Apart from
what was that again? That was somebody said.
Apart from your 500,000 YouTube subscribers.
They know.
Yeah, you let them in, but no one else.
Those guys are allowed in. You guys are allowed in.
My top two spirit animals that I've had exes that has popped up several times have been a tortoise or the one on the cover of the live album.
Llama.
The llama.
Or the alpaca.
Yeah. So that's the two that I've had the most. How about you? Panther?
No, silkworm.
Really?
Yeah, just a little grub.
Was that afterwards? Was that after the divorce?
No, I think there's something about when I was born that makes me a silk. I've actually forgotten what that...
Is that to do with Chinese mythology?
It might be, actually.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because of the combination of the... I don't know.
Where do you stand on this thing about silk? Where apparently all of the silkworms...
fabrics.
No, but the fact that silk's a lovely thing, and as we get older, both of us appreciate it more. And I've obviously been telling you about the delights of having a silk pillowcase that I take with me on tour, and I'm not ashamed to say that.
Actually, one of my patrons, by the way, the link to my Patreon is in the... one of my patrons gave me one for my birthday, and it's become my touring pillowcase, but I don't really notice any difference.
But where do you stand? Really? You don't notice any?
Yeah.
Okay. I think if you've got dry curly hair, it's a good thing because there's less friction and so less frizz.
I have oily, wavy hair, so it's different.
Really? But we both enjoy the seawater in our hair, don't we?
There's nothing better.
So one question, and this is what I was trying to ask you about the silk aspect. Do you feel guilty about all of the silkworms that die in the production of silk?
Yeah.
Apparently that's a thing.
Well, do they die anyway, or how long are they supposed to live?
Good point.
And they get to do what they love, which is making silk, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I figured. That's their raison d'etre, I think. What else?
Although, having said that, what I normally do is I'll get tencel, which is made from some sort of fibre, like a bamboo-y thing. I don't know whether it's got the
sort of vegans against silk, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll never catch me buying silk, but I was gifted it by one of the patrons.
Is that why? Yeah. But what do you think of vegan clothes?
Most of my clothes are vegan, aren't they? This is all cotton, tencel, cotton. This is some sort of nylon-y thing.
That excuse me for being ignorant.
Not even a leather belt. Look at this. That's not leather, see?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a nice belt. Unfortunately, this one is...
It's not a nice belt. It looks like... there might be a little bit
I was going through customs in America, actually, the other day, and the guy liked it. What's the point of that? Who cares what custom guy likes? Jesus.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about clothes because you brought it down to silk.
Denim vegan?
Yeah.
That's
I think it is, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the...
Glad to hear that.
It's made out of cotton, isn't it? It's cotton.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's probably... Historically, there's going to be a lot of sort of exploitative practices in harvesting the cotton that you need to make those things, and the sweatshops and all that stuff too. But I mean, in essence...
Yeah.
I think it can be vegan, yeah. But anyway, I was talking about clothes. You are the most stylish member of the band. There was no question about that.
Not true. People just say that.
And people say it. And if people say it,
You're the most stylish.
What other barometer is there if people say that?
You're the most stylish.
I don't think that's true.
Okay.
I love clothes, but you know.
So
I'm not pretending to know what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, okay.
I
should have just taken that compliment.
Yeah, you just take the compliment, man.
Excuse me. Yeah, that was actually not cool the way that I batted that way like that.
There was a conversation we had once with Dan, and it was like you were advising Dan what to wear, and you said that, you know, some people consider me to be somewhat of a fashion expert. I don't know if you've seen, and then that's what gave you the launch pad to advise Dan, who didn't fucking listen to you, and he should really, he should.
Yeah.
You know.
Dan and Rue can afford to be fashion blind because they're square jawed, kind of handsome, kind of.
Whereas we're the sort of ratty, we're the ratty ones.
We're more emotional and
we're the poets. They're the warriors.
We're greedy.
What is that too?
Greedy for praise and recognition.
Affirmations. We don't get them because of our visages. You know, we don't get those. So we need to. And the other thing is, I think a compliment that's related to what you're wearing means more than a compliment about your face. Because what you're wearing is something that you've curated and a style that you've developed yourself.
Yeah.
It's about your personality and the way you express it. You know?
My friend's grandfather liked to wear nice clothes. I remember I've been looking at pictures of the way he dressed in the 70s, 80s. So if I did get it from anywhere, it would have been from him.
Mm.
But I guess it's not really a great example given I'm just wearing this shirt I've worn for the last 15 years. It's probably just if you're skinny, I guess, in a way you're kind of designed like the high-end kind of models, you know, have that kind of skinny, kind of rakish thing that kind of looks good with clothes on and looks even better with clothes off.
Indeed. Okay, quick fire round. I'm going to make up some stupid questions.
Fashion related?
It can't. Well, one of them will be.
Yeah.
If you had an infinite amount of money and you could go to a watch store that had all of the watches in the world, have you ever looked at a watch and thought, that's the watch for me, I would like to have it, but it's too expensive?
That's a good question. A few years ago I thought I should have a watch. I'm in my 50s.
And now you got one. So what's this, a driving watch
or something? It was a present from a lovely person.
How do you see the...
and I like it because you can't read the time. You have to take a picture with your phone. So it takes quite a long time. If someone asks you the time, you have to take a picture and then pick up the picture and tell them the time.
Is it waterproof?
It's very small. Shall I put it next to the camera?
Yeah.
This is it here.
Zoom in there. Isn't that a lovely timepiece?
And I like the fact it's almost like a bunker.
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
Yeah, it's like a bunker, like really high security. It's almost like the time is so precious. It's a metaphor again.
Yeah. Time is so precious that just to check what time it is, you need to take a photograph of it.
Yeah, exactly. It's
photograph.
Almost, what's that thing again, that information that the government has again? What's it called again?
The classified information.
Yeah, it's classified information. The time.
It's on a need-to-know basis, and if you really need to know, you'll be prepared to take a picture of your watch.
This is a classified information watch. But being serious, the one that I looked at and I would want, and I couldn't really afford was, and excuse me if I get the name wrong,
Patek Philippe.
Yeah, how do you say it again?
Patek Philippe.
Patek Philippe. I saw like a navy blue 70s one.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
It was just elegant.
Yeah, it's a Calatrava.
Because I don't suit those big chunky things.
Yeah, in the 70s they were much smaller, and then the trend became really big. I don't like big watches either.
Yeah.
But they were actually like something like 35 millimeters across those old Calatravas. I know the exact one you mean, because the case is a little bit like oval, isn't it? It's an interesting shape.
You know something, it's when you look really hard for something, as you well know, things come to you, don't they?
Yeah. You
know that being a songwriter and a lyricist, and you're very good at that, and you've actually taught all of us the art of waiting for it to come to you.
I get scared though when you do on this writing trip here, like and the last one as well. Like the first couple of days, I got nothing, and I'm like, okay, and I know I'm supposed to wait, and I know it'll come, but it's like it gets 2 or 3 days into a week session, and you think, I'm letting the guys down here, and then I have a day when it all comes out. You know,
and in Scotland too, it can get antsy. But it's all part of the journey, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
And
But having said that, do you believe, and this is another quick fire one, do you believe that songs are in the ether, or is it something that you construct using your psyche and all that?
it's something to do with that quote, isn't it?
Yeah.
With everything's
Yeah.
something to do with that quote.
And so, okay,
Everything.
so let me ask you this then: if you write a song, is that something that the universe is making happen to you, or are you really creating that, or is the universe giving it to you?
I think it's both. It's not giving or taking, isn't it? It's that thing that's in between.
But the universe is
You're
presenting an
resonating with
opportunity.
it. You're vibrating with it.
Are you though, or is it like the way dreams work, where they're supposed to be like an amalgamation of the previous day's experiences coupled with some other emotional stuff and
Well, that's
some
the thing,
unresolved childhood trauma?
Yeah. It's something I think to describe and talk about always sounds a bit silly. And
It does,
never quite right.
but the only
I
reason
feel like
why
it's beyond words
you know,
almost. It's more to do with like the animal, when you look at a dog and, the mystery, the sense. Okay, I like the French expression, following your nose. And it's why we love dogs, because dogs follow their nose and dogs sense something. So I think it's to do with sensing things. And I'm not saying that because I practice that, because but it's just something that I really admire in other people, including yourself. And I'd like to be more like that myself.
Do you reckon the reason why I wanted to ask that is because it's leading into this question? So if there is an element of a song being in the ether and then you being ready to accept it, is it possible that AI is basically a net that catches these songs that are in the ether?
No, I completely disagree with that. And coming back to something just hit me just now when you were saying that, Rick Rubin mentioned it actually. And he said, you have to remember it's not about you, it's not about yourself. So you have to forget yourself and lose yourself. So that could be why it takes so long.
In the music, the moment you own it, you better never let it go. You only get one chance, do not miss the chance to blow. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime, you better use. Hey, that Eminem song from 8 Mile.
Of course.
Could have one of those on, would have been a hit then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Honestly, Dre, great producer, but sometimes he misses the obvious stuff, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah, we're using that test, aren't we? We used to do the bossa nova test, now we're doing the country test.
Yeah. So so that is true, isn't it? Like in the olden days, we used to write a song and it would be like a rock and roll song, and then we'd say, "Can we play it in the bossa nova style?" And it'd still sound good because you and I have a real affection for bossa nova.
We liked it because the first ever Darkness song was "I Love You 5 Times," wasn't it? There was actually 4 or 5 years before the band were signed.
And that song came about with me and you pissing around. That's actually, and I genuinely believe that all of the best stuff comes from pissing around.
I think you're right.
And there's something about
losing yourself, forgetting yourself, because pissing around is the fastest, surefire way of forgetting yourself.
Let me tell you something else that I think. It's play.
Yeah.
In the same way that intimacy with someone you love is play.
Yeah.
Making music with people you love, it's play.
Yeah.
And all the things that are interesting and creative come from playing.
Yeah.
And that's why collaboration is important. And that's why, like, if you find the right people to work with, as we have, then it's always a joy because it's basically just fun. You know? And that's how the best marriages and the best bands and the most any project that's creative or romantic with any longevity is because you're playing.
Yeah,
and
of course.
And I think that's, when you're playing, that focuses you for a kick-off.
Yeah.
Because, like, think about when you're playing soccer, there's a ball, you don't give a fuck about the bills you've got to pay, you don't care about the people that are shouting at you at the side to pass. You'll take your time and you'll fucking launch a searcher. But you need the focus to do that, and nothing else in your life matters in that moment. And I think that's what play is. Play is just
it's nice the way you brought in relationships into that too, because you're right, it's the same principle applies everywhere. You're on to a winner with a partner when you can just rip the piss out of each other and ego goes out the window. You don't care, you're just ripping the piss out of each other because you know that you're both humans. You're like,
I go for a cliff run every day, and I'm running up there, and the people I bump into the most up there is elderly couples holding hands, or they're sitting down having a picnic, or they're hiking, and it's that's not an easy thing to get up. You know, you have to go into beast mode to be able to run it. It's properly challenging.
Yeah.
And they're up there in their 80s, holding hands, sitting on top of a cliff. It's fucking beautiful, and it's just like
that's nice.
That's the dream.
Yeah,
that's the dream.
Yeah,
that'll be me and you one day, Frankie. Not in the same way exactly, but it nearly is. That's what people think.
It's a magical spot. People like to say we're in Cornwall.
Yeah, we can say we're in Cornwall. I think when we go down swimming, I think that's what people think we are.
You think?
Yeah, I think they think we're romantically intertwined.
I wonder.
Yeah,
it's funny, that strange thing that happened when it started a few years ago when people would say that we were brothers. It never happened the 17 previous years, and it just happened like a couple of years ago. It was probably just the moustache thing, wasn't it? It was when you cut your hair. It was when you cut your hair, because the long hair would make people think that you were Dan's brother.
Yeah. Well, now everyone thinks Dan's me.
Yeah.
And they think I'm the other one, unless they've been watching the YouTube, and then it's, you know what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Frankie Poullain.
It's a pleasure.
I'm going to do. You want to join me for the a cappella again?
Let's do it.
Do it straight down the barrel.
Justin Hawkins writes again. I've done the same thing. I've done unison.
Yeah, lovely.
I always end up in unison.
But you're holding a nice sort of.
Why do I always end up in unison? Starting my fucking life.
I think you sound a bit ABBA when you do that.
Unison Charlie, yeah? Oh, really?
Again. Nice one.
Thank you for watching. If you want to get special secret updates about my new projects and music, then sign up to my mailing list. There's a link in the description. You can also listen to this podcast as an audio podcast on all of the streaming platforms. So, meanwhile, I'll see you next Monday for another episode of Justin Hawkins Rides Again, the podcast. Nice one, guys. See you on the ice. Okay.